Welcome to an episode of Curiosity Cure. With the 2018 reboot of Halloween and follow-up movie Halloween Kills, we are reintroduced to the seemingly immortal killing machine Michael Myers. Although it is certainly terrifying and entertaining to watch the boogeyman hack away at unsuspecting victims, all the while increasing that kill count meter, even the least avid moviegoers might start to question the realisticness of such an event. Possibly, even start to doubt the competence of our law enforcement agencies. Fear not. In this video, we will go over everything illogical about the movie and allude to an alternative play-out of events if this were to happen in the real world and prove why Michael Myers would never have stood a chance outside the realm of fiction. Before we get started, if you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing and giving this video a like. At the start of the film, Michael Myers is visited by two reporters the day before he is to be transferred. The reporters were interested in understanding the mind of the killer. While it is not unusual for high-profile serial killers to generate media interest, what is unusual is the lack of security. We see a total of 3 officers accompanied by a K-9. The officers have no visible weapon guarding a dozen inmates. Moreover, there are no apparent guard towers to serve as overwatch. While one might argue that the prisoners are chained up and would not pose much of a threat, under the assumption that jailers are familiar with Michael's abilities, redundancies would be in place, especially since there are visitors. Afterward, the reporters visit Laurie Strode, someone who has survived an encounter with Michael Myers. While Laurie reluctantly let the reporters in under the condition that she was to be paid, she reveals little about what we don't already know other than the fact that she has a rocky relationship with her family and, more importantly, the exact time and date of Michael's transfer, which appears to be public knowledge. Under any standard prisoner transfer procedure, this would never be the case as it is a serious safety concern. Not even the prisoner themselves is supposed to know when they are to be transferred. This ensures that the process will not be intervened by external forces who may attempt to rescue or assassinate the prisoners. Subsequently, we see this point proven as Laurie sits in her car outside Smith's Grove Sanitarium, pistol in hand, debating whether to engage Michael herself. As Michael gets on the prison bus, there is only one sheriff deputy visible. In addition, Michael's doctor, Dr. Sartain, is allowed to go on the bus for a ride along. Setting aside the obvious disregard for security, a convict of Michael's caliber would not be in a bus with other minor offenders. He would be under the custody of the U.S. Marshals Services for the duration of the transport. While the bus drives away, we see that there are no other vehicles accompanying it. You'd think a high-profile prisoner transfer would dictate additional police patrol cars. Later in the night, 2 people approach the crash site of the prison bus while driving by. Instead of waiting in the car for police to arrive, they decide to exit the vehicle to check on the inmates, which predictably leads them to be slaughtered by the now-free Michael Myers. Sometime later, the first responder, Sheriff Deputy Hawkins, approaches the scene and discovers the 2 dead officers and the injured doctor who was shot by the kid in a panic earlier. The officer calls a possible 1098, which is the police code for escaped prisoners. The next day, it is Halloween and we see Dr. Sartain unconscious as the sheriff's department recaptures most of the inmates. However, Michael is yet to be found by the officers. Officer Hawkins points out that Michael Myers stood out from the rest of the inmates and acknowledges his violent nature as he recites the past horrors of Michael's actions to the sheriff. However, the sheriff fails to see the danger it would expose to the community. Instead of sending all units to hunt down Michael or contacting local TV news networks and warning the public of a murder on the loose, he follows up with a smirky remark, mocking the idea of canceling Halloween. This carelessness is beyond any justification. Any law enforcement official would not make such a reckless judgment purely on the basis of it being a holiday. Meanwhile, as the 2 reporters from earlier make a stop at the gas station, Michael appears and slaughters them both along with the employees. Michael then retrieves his mask from the reporter's car before leaving the scene. Later, Laurie hears about the bus accident on the news and subsequently learns about Michael Myers' escape. She hastily heads over to her daughter Karen's house and warns them about the threat while criticizing the lack of security in her house. Karen, who felt she was controlled by her mother's fears, disregards the warning and kicks Laurie out. In the afternoon, the police approach the crime site where Michael Myers killed the reporters. They discover the bloody bodies and put them away in body bags. This time, a crowd was gathered behind the police lines. A hospital gown was found at the scene and the sheriff confirms that it was Michael's. Yet, the sheriff still does not take any new measures, even after a second homicide scene. Later that night, Michael goes on a murder rampage. He appears at seemingly random houses, then proceeds to stab his victims as the police scramble to stop the carnage. Eventually, Officer Hawkins responds to a domestic disturbance call where he encounters Michael in a house full of the freshly murdered victims. Seemingly, Laurie also appears on site after listening to police radio channels. However, Michael slips away before the 2 could engage. Shortly after, police cars arrive at the scene along with the doctor and sheriff. Despite the murderous monster on the loose, the sheriff continues to keep a cool demeanor and did not remotely mention calling for additional backup. Instead, he wants Officer Hawkins to take the doctor with him, claiming that he might be an asset without giving a clear explanation. Instead of calling for helicopters, he believes that bringing a civilian to chase a dangerous murderer is the best course of action. As Officer Hawkins drives around searching for Michael, the doctor reveals his fascination for Michael's behavior. He wants to understand what drives Michael to kill. Additionally, he urges Officer Hawkins to not harm Michael as he is the property of the state. This is a blatantly false statement and would go against the 13th Amendment, which states that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States, or any place subject to their jurisdiction. While Michael is a prisoner and lacks the freedom to move around, he still retains his basic human rights while he is under the custody of the penitentiary. Regardless, this is no justification for him not being harmed. Officers are authorized to respond to violent situations with equal or greater force as it is necessary to apprehend the suspect while maintaining officer safety. Laurie, with the escort of police officers, goes to her daughter Karen, who is oblivious to the entire situation. The family evacuates the house to go to Laurie's hideout. Karen attempts to get in touch with her daughter Allison, who was attending a school dance, but it goes to voicemail. Allison in the meantime leaves the dance early to go home with her friend Oscar after breaking up with her boyfriend Cameron. Oscar takes Allison to a shortcut through a neighbor's yard. Oscar attempts to advance on Allison, which she did not appreciate. After being left behind by Allison, Oscar is killed by Michael, who appeared out of the shadows. Allison, hearing the screams, goes to check on Oscar, only to find his dead body. In a panic, she ran across the streets, knocking on doors and crying for help. Eventually, someone answered the doors, the police is called, and Officer Hawkins picks her up. However, instead of driving to her grandmother's house, Hawkins decides to scout out Michael. Eventually, they come across Michael a block away. Officer Hawkins runs over Michael with his car, which renders him unconscious. While Michael is considered an armed suspect, there are no justifications for this action. Standard police procedure would require officers to respond with deadly force only in the instance where there is an immediate danger to the officer or a civilian. Since none of these factors were apparent in this case, Officer Hawkins should not have responded in this manner, especially considering he is a veteran with decades of experience. Moreover, he was carrying civilians in his car. It would have been more appropriate to call for backup and let other officers engage. This action serves no purpose other than to drive the plot further. The doctor checks on Michael to see if he is hurt. Officer Hawkins, determined to kill Michael, tells the doctor to step out of the way. The doctor refuses and stabs Officer Hawkins in the neck and proceeds to drag the unconscious Michael to the back of the car with Allison still inside. The doctor then drives them towards Laurie's house. His fascination for Michael leads him to want to see how things play out. However, Allison manages to lie to the doctor about Michael speaking to her and convince him to stop the car. Before he could let her out, Michael wakes up, kicks the police divider free, and drags the doctor out of the car. This gives Allison the opportunity to flee. Allison runs into the woods and heads for her grandmother Laurie's house. However, Michael gets there first, kills the two police officers nearby, and strangles Allison's father. Laurie leaves the basement hideout to engage Michael, and the two get into a confrontation. By this time, Allison has arrived at the house and the three manages to trap Michael in the basement before setting it ablaze. Laurie, Karen, and Allison flee the house, leaving behind Michael to burn. They manage to pull over a car and head to the hospital. Not long after, firefighters were called and they attempt to put out the fire. The firefighters completely disregard the murdered police officers and enter the house. One of the firefighters falls into the basement under the collapsing floorboard. He pushes his panic button before coming face to face with Michael. Michael takes his axe and strikes him down. He then proceeds to drag and kill his companion. Michael exits the burning house with the axe and hacks away at the remaining firefighter. Instead of running away, the firefighters engage him and foreseeably get slaughtered. Michael then continues on his massacre and enters the house of a couple. Laurie, Karen, and Allison arrive at the hospital, and Laurie gets taken to surgery immediately while Allison and her mom stand traumatized. Later, they are questioned by detectives. Allison and Karen tell the officers what happened and how they killed Michael. However, the officer revealed to them that Michael escaped the fire and is still on the loose. Officers arrive at the scene of Laurie's house. The sheriff finally deploys all units and requests backup from other counties, after 9 separate murder scenes. This level of incompetence is unthinkable for any law enforcement department. It is brazenly clear that the officers were short-handed and the sheriff decides to wait an entire night before calling for backup. Soon it becomes evident that even the people of Haddonfield become aware of the failures of the police department. A group of people led by Tommy Doyle, someone who also survived an encounter with Michael Myers, proceeds to go out and hunt Michael down. Allison, reunited with her boyfriend Cameron, joins the hunt along with his father Lonnie. Meanwhile, Michael engages one of the groups sent out to hunt him. He murders everyone except for a woman named Lindsay, who managed to escape into the woods. At the hospital, the other escapee, Lance Tivoli, arrives and is somehow mistaken for Michael, which doesn't make sense. In both movies, the director works hard to prevent the viewer from getting a good look at Michael's face. However, considering that he spent 40 years inside a mental hospital, you'd think he has at least one mugshot that would be broadcast on the news and used to identify him. Also, as the viewer, we already know that Lance wasn't Michael. This series of events adds zero suspense to the plot and serves as nothing more than an annoyance. Tommy in the meantime studies the locations of where all the murders happened and figures out Michael is heading to his former home. Elsewhere, Michael arrives at his house and kills the couple who lives there. Lonnie, Cameron, and Allison soon arrive at the house. Lonnie, without any assistance, enters the house alone. Cameron and Allison chase after him, but it was too late. Cameron finds his father's corpse and gets ambushed and killed by Michael. Allison is struck down by Michael, but before he could finish her off, Allison's mother Karen strikes him from behind. Karen then proceeds to take Michael's mask and runs outside. He lures Michael into a group led by Tommy. Tommy and his friends swarm and attack Michael and supposedly kill him. However, after the mob dissipates, Michael recovers and massacres everyone. The central issue with the ending is once again the lack of police presence. If a group of drunk bar patrons can put two and two together, there is no excuse for detectives to not find Michael first. This is fundamentally reflected in the plot of both films. Instead of seeing Michael mow through the challenges of evading law enforcement, we see the challenges move out of the way for Michael. The writer decides to cripple the abilities of law enforcement. This level of lazy writing is prevalent from the very start of Michael's massacre. We never got to see how Michael escaped the prison bus. There is no plausible reason not to show this scene. This does little in the way of suspense, and it is most likely just a way to avoid choreographing a complex fight scene. Throughout the remainder of the film, there are just too many convenient instances that sway in Michael's favor to give it the benefit of the doubt. Now in the following section, we will be going through what should have happened if Michael Myers broke free in the real world. While the events of Halloween take place in a seemingly typical small town in the US, the various decisions made by the director undermine the realistic nature of what might have happened. For our hypothetical scenario, we will make it as close as possible to reality. In order to do that, we will be using a real location for the setting of Halloween. In the film, Haddonfield, Illinois is a fictional town, but it draws heavy inspiration from co-writer Debra Hill's hometown of Haddonfield, New Jersey in Camden County. Therefore, that's where we will be basing our story. Camden County boasts a population of over 500,000. According to crime data, Camden has a crime rate of 45 per 1,000 residences, making it one of the most dangerous places in America. It is the perfect spawn place for Michael Myers. While there are no psychiatric wards, the most appropriate place to hold him that we can find is the Camden County Correctional Facility. It bears a striking resemblance to Smith's Grove Sanitarium. In the films, Michael is supposedly transferred to an undisclosed facility. In our example, we are going to assume he is to be transferred to a Supermax, where he will spend the remainder of his days. In the States, there is only one Supermax prison still operational today. The Federal Correctional Complex of Florence, which is operated by the Federal Bureau of Prisons located in the state of Colorado. On the night of the transfer, Michael is wakened from his cell without forewarning. Guards pat him down thoroughly and process him for departure. He is then handed over to the deputies. However, these are not everyday sheriff deputies, these are deputies from the U.S. Marshal Services. Equipped with ballistic vests and semi-automatic weapons, they load Michael, the lone prisoner, onto the bus. He will be restrained in his seat and watched by them at all times. At exactly 2300 hours, the bus departs to a nearby airstrip with the escort of sheriff patrol cars. From there, Michael will board the infamous Con Air, operated by the Justice and Alien Transportation System. As the bus passes into a dark section of the road, Michael suddenly breaks out of his restraints, his monstrous strength allowing him to effortlessly rip apart the steel shackles binding him down. One of the marshals instantly raises his gun to fire, but Michael slams his head into a wall while simultaneously unsheathing the combat knife from his vest, and slices his throat. The second marshal opens fire, but his rifle is not suited for close quarters, allowing Michael to close the gap and stab him in the chest multiple times. The final marshal draws his pistol and opens fire, but Michael uses the dead marshal's body as a shield before throwing it at him, which knocks him down. Before the marshal could get up, Michael walks over and stomps on his head, instantly crushing his skull. The bus driver attempts to pull over, but Michael grabs him by the throat and bangs his head against the steering wheel, rendering him unconscious, and causing the bus to crash into the trees. Michael then drags the bus driver outside before snapping his neck. The sheriff officer pulls over and gets out of their car to investigate. They discover the dead bus driver, but Michael is nowhere to be seen. Then suddenly from behind, Michael emerges from the shadows and strangles the officers. Meanwhile, a car approaches the accident, and 911 is called. A nearby sheriff officer named Hawkins from the Camden County Sheriff Department responds to the call. Within minutes, Hawkins arrives, sees the bloodbath of the marshals, officers, and civilians. The officer immediately decides to call for backup. Moments later, several police units from both the County Sheriff's Department and the Camden Police Department arrive at the scene. Both County Sheriff Gilbert Wilson and Chief Gabriel Rodriguez are informed about the situation. The County Sheriff and Police Chief coordinate and order all 502 officers to search for Michael Myers. Neighboring departments are also called in to assist and monitor the major highways to make sure Michael doesn't escape. The officers are on high alert for the entire night but find no traces of Michael. The next morning, dispatch notifies the officers of a second homicide. This time, the sheriff arrives at the scene personally. It was Halloween tonight, and the sheriff realizes that with resources and manpower stretched thin, this was beyond his department. Without further hesitation, he contacts the city commissioner's office. Louis Capelli, director of the commission, promptly holds an emergency meeting. Collectively, the commission decides to announce a state of emergency in the city and advise the residents to remain indoors until Michael is captured. Local news organizations scramble to report on the development and inform the residents of the situation. At approximately 1800 hours, the authorities become increasingly concerned. There are still no traces of Michael, as a third homicide has just been reported in a residential area. While some residents, informed about the serial killer on the loose, decide to stay home, the majority still choose to go out. The commissioner, with little choice, contacts the New Jersey governor's office. Within the hour, the governor decides that the situation warranted the National Guards. The McGuire-Dix Lakehurst Joint Base, led by Colonel John Brighton, receives orders and deploys the 174th Infantry Brigade. Within a few hours, over 3,000 fully armed military troops mobilizes and secure a perimeter around Camden County. Every route out of the city is guarded by military security checkpoints. Michael Myers has no way out now. The Commissioner Board decides to place the city on a lockdown, and curfews will now be strictly enforced until Michael is captured. The National Guards now start to move into the city, with the aid of police officers from several jurisdictions. Helicopters now patrol the sky, shining bright beams of lights down on the dark streets below. Not long after, the Air Patrol notices a suspicious man with a white mask entering a residential home. He contacts his fellow units to respond. Within minutes, police officers, SWAT teams, and National Guards surround the house perimeter and prepare to enter. However, just then Michael exits through the front door, a bloodied kitchen knife in hand. The officer screams at him to drop the weapon, but Michael lunges forward, attempting to slice the nearest officer's throat. The soldiers and officers open fire, riddling Michael with bullets as he drops to the ground. The soldiers contact HQ, confirming the kill. However, intelligence officers did some digging into Michael and were aware of his abilities. A special unit soon arrives to secure Michael's body in a special containment cell and transports him away, never to be seen by the light of day ever again. There's no denying that Michael Myers is a perplexing adversary with abilities that veer in the direction of being inhuman. However, he is clearly outmatched by the full might of the U.S. military. The writers of the show are evidently aware of this. Although it might be difficult to write an enticing narrative that addresses all these challenges, choosing to forego any subtleties and blatantly ignore these loopholes is an insult to the intelligence of the viewer. While the horror trope often dwells in the realm of science fiction, Halloween is based in a realistic town without any of the realistic characteristics of one, making it appear as a hollow shell. Every time the movie fails to clean up a loophole, it pulls the viewer out of the setting and leaves them questioning the logic. It then becomes a movie that's not full of terror but full of frustration. Perhaps in the final film, some of the loose ends will be tied to give us a more satisfactory conclusion to this reboot series. Anyways, that's all for today. Thank you for tuning in. For more quality content, please like and subscribe. And as always, have a great day.